All right, welcome everyone. We are here with Ever Adventurous and friends again today. We are fans and we're going to do a talk back about the lore season at Evermore, so their Halloween season. We're going to talk about the plot and some of our favorite moments and different ways to play at Evermore. So we are really excited. We're going to, let's see. Oh, we've got 2 people on, and if you have any questions or comments as we are going, make sure to put those into the chat, and we will, keep mind of that. Yeah. Okay, so first thing we wanted to do was talk about some of the park changes that we've had this season. Robin, did you want to talk about some of the changes that you noticed and you enjoyed?
Yeah, sure. I loved that the hovel was open after being closed for most of the summer.
Me too.
It seems like it was closed a lot over the summer. So that's one of our favorite spots to hang out, especially on the cold nights. The fire pits at the hovel are some of the warmer ones. And so I loved that, and I loved the trick-or-treating they had available for kids this season. That was really fun to see all the characters engaging with children on such a special way. So, anyone else?
Yeah, Pitt, what did you...
Changes.
Changes.
Well, they had the haunt.
Yeah.
And that was fine. I didn't like that we didn't have access to so many indoor spaces, but that's life. I understand that the haunt is a big part of Halloween.
Should we talk about that in detail? Because they did it a little bit differently this year than they have in previous times. Mm-hmm. The way it was set up this year was that they had 3 paid adventure quests. Well, they had 2 paid adventure quests and 1 free one that you would get for completing the other 2. You have to complete them sequentially, so you do the first one and then go back and do the second one by going through the haunt a second time. And there was an element of the haunt that would tie into that quest. You'd go get your cards stamped by one of the guilds, and then the third one was outside in the main part of the park and involved the Candy Witch at the confectionery. And if you completed all 3, you would get this fancy leather coin for Lore 2021. So, do you guys have any thoughts on the quest? I know we all did at least one.
I did all 3 of them. It wasn't my favorite feature this season, so I won't comment on it.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's potential there because the quests were fairly simple, but I think there's room for improving on that. And it is nice to I felt like they were at least trying to incorporate the haunt more into maybe the story and something bigger than just a spook alley type situation.
It also seemed to be really popular, even if it wasn't our thing specifically.
Yeah.
And that's true. That's what I like about Evermore is that everything is a little more immersive. It's not just a haunt with jump scares. Everything is meant to have a quest and a story.
Right.
I think that I almost wish you could go through it a little more slowly and there wasn't this rush to worry about the crowd behind you, and you could linger a little more, which I feel like is really the vision of Evermore, that you can wander down the alleys and you can stop and talk to characters for a long time, So I would love to see more of that in future haunt seasons.
I mean, last year I thought it was really cool that some of the characters actually had stories behind them.
Yes.
And on finale night, some of those things got resolved, like the twin ghosts, for example.
Well, that sort of was the case this year as well with the Tosher.
That's right, yeah.
That's true.
And Clive and Winnie had a little bit of a story going on. Although unfortunately they weren't out of the haunt very often for me to talk to them about it, but they did have something going on. So they had that to a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the great changes this season was that I think they had a lot more food and treats and stuff available than they did during Mythos. Tell us about your soup. I know you're excited about the soup, Crow.
I just love soup in the fall, but they had their bread bowl soups back, which I liked. Pitt and I are both very fond of the steak and ale chowder.
And I loved it so much. I wish I'd known about it earlier.
Aside from that, the Copper Confectionery was pretty sparse last season, and this season it was filled with all sorts of different chocolates, as well as chocolates from Truffle Cottage, which are more specialty chocolates. And it smells like ice cream when you go in, finally, because they've got that ice cream to serve out to you.
Just in time for the cold.
Yeah, I know. I feel I don't know, I might not be the only person that eats ice cream regardless of what's going on.
They did have some very
though.
pretty desserts in the Kettle Cafe as well.
Yes, that was awesome. All right. Oh, and they had trick-or-treating this season,
Yes.
which was really fun for the kids. And the Candy Witch would give all the little kids candy, and she was hilarious. I loved her. I feel like she was such a fan favorite. Okay, next, we want to go into the plot because we're going to talk about a lot of different characters and a lot of different events that happened this season. So we put together a nice plot summary video for you that I am going to bring up to help kind of catch everyone up to date on what happened in Evermore this season. So here we go.
Concentrated her efforts into helping Evermore host a pumpkin festival. The Knights of Mythos stayed nearby to protect both her and the town of Evermore. The town was adorned with jack-o'-lanterns for the event, and there were plenty of sweet treats to be had. The festival attracted visitors from far and wide, such as Goldie from Sweden and the vampires Angelique and Leander, who sought after their own preferred delicacies. Oma, a witch, took up residence in the Copper Confectionery, where she would offer trades and information for those willing to help her, and hoped to begin a children's cooking course for all the young ones she was so fond of giving candy to. The Adventurers Guild came to Evermore in search of magical and historical artifacts. A doctor named Schneider and his apprentice Flossie came to town to learn of the magic there and conduct various experiments. Elizabetha, a witch from the woods nearby, sensed an influx of magic in town and came to the festival to investigate. Perhaps most notably, a large figure appeared at the front of town who was called Mordrin, or the Pumpkin King, as well as his followers, including Marmalade and the other pumpkin fairies. Cedric of the Blackheart Hunters had been bitten by a vampire sometime last season, but had kept it a secret from all except his hunting partner Gwen. He finally revealed this to others. He and Gwen have been working together to hunt and kill the vampire that bit him in hopes it would prevent him from turning. This was not enough, and so they have continued to hunt and kill each vampire in the lineage of the vampire that bit him, until the only vampire remaining was Archgrimoire Casimir. Archgrimoire is a title given to the oldest vampire living. Casimir had arrived in Evermore near the end of last season. He had been making efforts to create an army of the undead to take control of the realm. Cedric believed that killing Casimir in time would not only save the realm from that fate, but also allow him to remain human. Cedric opted to make an attempt on Casimir's life against Blackheart leader Drustin Grimm's council. They were stopped because Casimir controlled the younger vampires Leander and Angelique to subdue Drustin and Cedric. It was revealed that Grimm received his name from killing previous Archgrimoires, and so was called the Grim Reaper. Casimir spared the lives of his attackers, and they lived to fight another day. Grimm made a pact with Cordelia, a knight from Lore. She agreed to kill Casimir in exchange for an unknown weapon that Grimm used. It was determined that Casimir would not be able to be killed by physical means in his current state, due to his enhanced precognition and telekinetic abilities. Cordelia backed out of Grimm's deal because the weapon he gave her was a fake, with the real one on the way back to London in young Wickham's hands. Grimm and Cedric devised a plan and attacked Casimir with a dagger tipped with basilisk blood, which is highly toxic to vampires. They successfully poisoned Casimir, and Cedric's transformation was prevented. Cedric took up the mantle of Grimm as the newest person to have killed an Archgrimoire. Drustin had been gravely injured in the effort. Tosh Mayhew, also known as the Tosher, found something he shouldn't have in the sewers. Someone or something down there told him that he could keep his life and his job so long as he agreed to help out once in a while. We would eventually discover this was the voice of Mordrin, the name given to the darkness from Lore, who had taken the form of a giant jack-o'-lantern in Evermore. Mordrin said that Tosh can sense his enlightenment, otherwise known as the madness, on people. On Mordrin's orders, Tosh would periodically take different townsfolk up to the small crypt in the graveyard. He would keep them isolated there for a few minutes and return them to town. Those affected by the madness had various ailments, whether believing they were storybook characters or having hallucinations or other effects. An animancer named Randolph and Dr. Schneider performed a ritual to summon the Silver King, also known as Erbin Silver. He had been the first Mythosian ruler of Evermore and had perished 1,000 years ago prior in the act of defeating the darkness. At that time, Mordrin had taken the form of a giant black dragon. The weapon the Silver King had used long ago, called Fortune's Lance, no longer had enough magic in it to defeat Mordrin, so another solution had to be found. An alternate route eventually materialized in the form of a frost dagger. Jack from the Adventurers Guild had taken it from the Frost Giants of Aurora and brought it back to Evermore. Each guild had their own plan for how best to use the dagger to defeat Mordrin, and the World Walkers were able to vote on which plan they wanted to pursue. Ultimately, the Coven's plan won out. They would siphon the magical life force of the darkness into the staff and bind it there for further study. After studying it and finding a way to dispel it safely, they would do so. On the night of the ritual, the witches had World Walkers draw defense and protection runes and chalk around the town. Cordelia had been working to goad the Queen of Lore's consciousness out of Delphi. The Queen was in control long enough to command Sir Percival and the Knights to return to Lore. He was compelled by the potion he'd been given last season to follow the Queen's orders, so he was unable to aid as the plan moved forward. Once the ritual began, hordes of monsters from the haunt attempted to enter the Coven. They were blocked by the protection magic. The monsters were soon marched out of town as the Coven brought the staff to the foot of the Pumpkin King. To their alarm, the Frost Dagger failed to siphon Mordrin's power. Drustin, still horribly injured from the fight with Casimir, took matters into his own hands. Enacting the Blackheart's plan, he used both the staff and the dagger as weapons. He jumped into range of Mordrin and used the weapons to defeat him, losing his own life in the process. Drustin had sacrificed himself just as the Silver King had long ago. While the Silver King's efforts had only long subdued Mordrin, it seemed this time Mordrin was truly destroyed. However, it also seemed he was only one part of the darkness, as another entity entered the Pumpkin King form, calling itself the Fey King. The defeat of Mordrin removed the remaining presence of the Lore Queen's influence from Princess Delphi's mind. His fall cured all the townsfolk of their madness, and Tosh of Mordrin's influence over him. On Halloween night, a celebration was held. Cedric, who had started to court Ella, left town with her and Gwen. Annie, who had been caught in a love triangle with Nox and Cinder, discovered they were really two personalities living in the same man, one created by the other. Cinder had been becoming increasingly aggressive and manipulative towards Annie. A spell was cast that resulted in only Nox remaining, who proposed to her. She accepted, and they will travel to Paris. Cordelia is returning to Lore. The Adventurers Guild backed their travels. Damien and Princess Delphi proposed to each other. They and the Knights returned to Mythos. As the Pumpkin Festival came to a close and the immediate threat of Mordrin was past, the portal to Lore remains open.
All right, so if you have any other questions about the plot as we move forward, go ahead and put those into the comments, and we'll try to see if any of us know anything about that. Aside from what we covered in the video, anyone who's been to Evermore knows, there is so much individual story, it's impossible to cover in a video. So we're gonna talk about some of our experiences with the plot beyond that. I know that we had some interesting interactions with the vampire. Was that Crow and Robin? You're going to talk about that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, I can talk about the vampires. Do you want to
Please.
share anything first?
I will go off what you say, because I wasn't specifically involved with the Evermore vampires
Yeah.
very much. I was more involved with Casimir because I was involved with the Cedric and Casimir plot.
Sure. So this season I came in with kind of a villain storyline. This was my first time trying to dig into kind of the more unsavory characters. It was actually really fun, and I didn't expect the experiences I had with the vampires. So I got to know them quite a bit, and through spending time with them, I actually stopped seeing them as monsters and more. I like totally sympathized with them, and I didn't expect that happening. But it was really interesting, their worldviews. Like, the vampires would share that they kill people just to eat when they need to, and they're called monsters for that. But then they talked about other characters like the knights who kill people for fun, or Cordelia, who actually kills vampires for sport, like a fox hunt. And she wasn't called a monster, but they were, and they were just trying to survive.
Yeah, it's worth noting that actually Damien and Barnabas both told me that they hunted vampires nearly, if not entirely, to extinction in lore. So
Yeah, so that
Something to
definition
consider.
of monster, the definition of monster changed for me, and I didn't expect that. And it was really interesting spending time with them. I bribed some of the vampires to hypnotize other characters, which was really fun. Leander, in particular, would do
Dan
things
had
for
about
rings.
a 50% success rate.
Yeah. So my favorite was when I got him to hypnotize Annie. He hypnotized Annie into thinking she was a pumpkin fairy, and so she started dancing around. And I guess there was some big plot happening with Annie that night,
Yes,
right?
it was one leg of the Nox, Cinder, Annie plotline was going on at that time, and actually, my favorite one that you did was that Leander tried to hypnotize Nox, and Nox looked at him and said, "I'm not stupid," and walked away. But yeah, at the time, we needed Annie for that plot, and so we had to like unhypnotise her.
Yeah, I think you
it all
guys got
worked.
Gwen or somebody to
Yeah,
do it.
Gwen did it. That's a long story, but yeah, it all worked out in the end.
Yeah.
But
It was really fun, and hypnotizing different characters to do different things. We had a good time. Like, Percival couldn't withdraw his sword because we hypnotized him to think it was too heavy, and so then he would try to open it, pull it out of his sheath, and he couldn't, but we could, and he was confused. But it was fun. It was really great. The actors played along really nicely with it, almost all the time.
All right, now Pitt. I know you were really involved
Yes.
with some of the plot line having to do with Snow White and Red.
Rose Red.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, so Snow White and Rose Red, darling characters. They were sisters, both cursed by an evil dwarf when they were children. So this evil dwarf, I believe the story is that he was stuck under a tree, just his beard, and so they cut off his beard. And then later on, he was caught by a hawk with what was left of his beard, so they cut it again to save the evil dwarf. And then
So they were just trying to help
third,
him?
Yeah. A third time, a fish had gotten a hold of his beard again, and they cut it again.
and this
so
is all from the Grimm's fairy tales. version
yeah,
of the
yeah.
story, right?
So
Yeah.
it's the same story as the real Snow White and Rose Red. If you look at the original fairy tale, so they were both cursed. Rose Red's curse was that at night she turned into this big grizzly bear, and at first she was kind of an animal mind, but then she gained control over that mind, and now she did use that bear physical form to fight monsters as a Blackheart. Or I guess she never really became a Blackheart officially, but she would fight as a bear at night. And then Snow White was a little more gruesome. She would turn into this mindless state, kind of like a zombie, where she would start oozing poison apples out of her skin, and she would offer them to people, not being in her right mind, and it would kill them. She would wake up from this mindless state seeing dead bodies on the floor with the poison apples that she produced. So they both had curses, and at some point in the season, Snow White was trying to find an artifact called the Sodhaka, and it was an artifact that she'd heard about from India in her travels because she was an adventurer. And this artifact had the cool magical ability of being able to undo curses. And so she had heard that it was in Evermore, at the heart of Evermore, which ended up being just where people enjoy being, ended up being in a coven. And it was taking the form of something that her and Rose Red shared in their history, ended up being in the form of a tree, a little tiny tree ornament, because of the tree that fell on the dwarf, right? So she put together a team of world walkers to find it and to help her get the artifact. So I was a part of that. And on, I think, the last story night, we had the pleasure of seeing her and Rose Red get the artifact, go up to the gazebo at the center of town, and they did some kind of ceremony where it undid their curses, and they came down from the gazebo cured, and they were very happy. Personally, however, I wish that Rose Red wouldn't have taken the curse off because I think being a bear is pretty cool, but it's gone now. So maybe she can work on transformative magic and get
She
it
was
back.
talking about doing that on the
Yeah.
last night, actually. Yeah. So
Yeah, so that's the story of Rose Red and Snow White.
That would be awesome. All right, was there anything else that anybody wanted to cover plot-wise?
I suppose I could talk about Cinder and Nox here.
Yeah, talk about it a little more.
So I want to commend Evermore for training us all very well to see two men played by the same actor, and they say these are different people, and we say, yeah, okay. Yeah, obviously. And,
Checked out.
And then this time, we're sitting here making jokes all through Mythos about how Cinder and Nox are never in the same place, and isn't that funny? And then little did we know that Superman and Clark Kent are secretly the same person. So what we found out this season was that Nox had failed to flirt with Annie years past, and for some reason decided that the way to fix this was to fabricate a man. And so essentially he took some of the, like, what he considered like the better parts of his personality, so confidence and passion and spontaneity and all of these sort of fun personality traits, and transmuted them with Embergeist ashes into another version of himself, and that was Cinder. But he was losing control of the transformation this season, and Cinder was becoming really, as he became his own person, was becoming really unstable and mean and like just not fun to be around. There were a lot of nights when he would be in town and I'm like, all right, what's gonna set him off? Like, is he gonna blow up again at Annie for no reason? Like, so he was, it's funny how my entire involvement in the Mythos storyline with Cinder and Annie was to be like, you guys just need to talk to each other, and now I'm just like, don't talk to that guy, he's awful. And then at the situation sort of deteriorated over time, but eventually they were sort of merged back into each other, and Nox is the main personality, but he seems to still have those like personality traits that Cinder, that he gave to Cinder.
For sure. And then we've had a lot of different people sort of ask us, how do you play a Evermore? The guild ranking system isn't as much as part of the play as it used to be. And that was one of the main activities that a lot of people spent their energy on before. So we're just going to talk about a few different ways that we interact with Evermore and sort of our favorite approaches to the way that we play there. Robin, did you want to start with what you had to say about that?
Sure. I know Pitt and I have a lot of different things, and so I think we're going to bounce back and forth a bit between the two of us. But one of my favorite things that we started this season was playing hide and seek with a wager. Pitt started that one actually with the Pirates Guild, and it's quite fun. Everyone who wants to play puts in something to the pot, and then we have boundaries in the park of where you're allowed to hide. And the last person to be found gets everything that was in the pot. So that was actually really fun, a new way to play. It was super, I felt like my inner child was resurrected again, as I was just so excited to hide. And actually, when we played one of the games, I missed a major plot point because I was hiding under the table.
Bad timing.
Yeah.
But especially on those nights where there's thousands of people and there's not much to do, like, that's something fun that you can play with just your friends. So.
Yeah, it doesn't require any advanced
As long as you don't go places you're not supposed to go, there's definitely limits.
Yeah, we had rules, you don't go off the paths into like the landscaping or anything. I asked the vendor if I could hide under their table, so
Right.
you don't presume you have access to anything, but it was fun.
Yeah.
What was one of your favorites?
So pranks, obviously. The Pumpkin Guild kind of, well, I've always loved playing pranks at the park, but the Pumpkin Guild, Marigold and Marmalade, they were all about pranks. They would send World Walkers on pranks that they had made. But one of the things that's so fun about Evermore and why I think like the lack of guilds and maybe like stories and quests not being as deep as maybe they have been in the past is not so bad, because Evermore's always been a place of like a sandbox play environment. Mm-hmm. They have the story and the characters and the setting all set out, so you can kind of play your own game. And that's kind of like, that's the reason we're giving you this list. It's some of the games that we've come up with, right? So just as far as like pranking, I did the ones that obviously the Pumpkin Guild sent me on, but then you had like Sir Taylor send in pine cones to Cordelia, because for some reason she didn't like pine cones. I'm not
And he
sure.
got a lot of people in on
He
that.
picked
Yeah.
pine cones because they're in abundant supply.
Okay, just
and they're like,
some object that.
yeah, it's something you can find anywhere. You
Yeah,
don't
he
have to
said he
pay a lot of
brought
money for it.
hundreds of pine cones to the park for that purpose, and so I joined in as well, and seeing her angry was fun. But I mean, the purpose of the prank is not to like seriously make anyone angry. It's really
you want
just
to
give them attention.
Confuse, don't abuse is the
Yeah.
Exactly.
saying
And
I hear a lot.
Do you guys know who started the prank giving vampires toothbrushes and toothpaste?
No, I didn't even
I
hear
have
about
no
I
that.
thought
idea.
that
I
one,
didn't hear that.
and I was trying to figure out who to credit with that, but that was another really cool one.
Yeah. There's some creative ways to do pranks.
Yeah.
There was another one that I really liked where Cordelia, after having been pranked so much by the pumpkin fairies, we decided to join forces. And so the pumpkin fairies distracted Sir Percival, and they were just kicking in the air saying, "Look at us, we're a distraction, look at us," as Cordelia snuck a toy sword into his belt. Just something harmless and funny, and I thought it was the funniest moment that night. So that was great.
I was
That's
wondering where
awesome.
Marigold got that little toy sword.
Oh my
Another
goodness.
fun game that's really easy that you can do anytime without any advanced prep is Bigger and Better. We played that a few times. Peter was giving out pumpkin seeds to world walkers, and so we started with those pumpkin seeds and did a contest with a few world walkers to see who could get the biggest or best item by the end of the night. And Pitt and I did like a duel with that.
Yeah.
I thought for sure I'd have him beat because someone sold me their soul.
That's all I focused on that night. It really became a fun thing to do.
Yeah, you still beat me. What was your winning object? Do you remember?
It was one of those bottles that the adventurers had where you shake it and it changes color.
Yeah.
Do you remember
The reason why they decided that beat the having a soul was because the soul was technically on a loan. I had to give it back to the person at the end of the month. So we let
Otherwise,
World
you would have
Walkers-
won.
Yeah, we let World Walkers outside the portal vote on that. So we had an unbiased jury, unless you bribed them beforehand.
Yeah. And
But that's it.
speaking of trading, like, that trading is a big part of what I do, and a lot of people trade, including the characters. And that's fun in and of itself, if you're looking for something to do. But there's more to trading than just getting stuff. Getting stuff is part of it. I know that one of my objectives for a long time has been acquiring the Evermore original coins that you see floating around in circulation sometimes. And that's been fun, but you got to remind yourself, like, why am I even doing this? Is this really what I want to be doing at the park? And for me, trading is more than that. It is an opportunity to talk to people. It's an excuse to ask the characters what kind of things they like. And in a lot of cases, trading items can actually be a bargaining tool to get information and learn more about the story and the underlying devices at Evermore.
Another one I enjoy is the Assassin's game. And that one's another easy one. We bring wooden clothespins into the park, and I put my name on them because it's fun for people to know who tagged them. And the way that works, it was started by the Rangers Guild a while ago, but you're supposed to sneak up to other world walkers and clip this clothespin on them without them noticing. And we started kind of doing that as a game as world walkers. The Rangers were not in Evermore this season, but the Assassin's game was still happening like every night.
Was
The-
it Bonnie sending people?
Yeah,
on this
the Artisans Guild was doing it
Oh,
as
they
well.
were doing
Yeah.
it? Okay.
I know because a couple of people thought that I was an employee and they would try to clip me.
Yeah.
And I would get upset at them.
And, like, I was-
Because I was in the Rangers, I'm pro at avoiding being clipped. I would see people's shadows coming up behind me and stuff and be like, ah!
That's good. I was getting dressed to do this filming today and found a clip on my corset that I didn't even know was on me.
Like 2 weeks later.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
it was
amazing.
ages ago. So that's another fun one.
I think another thing that's fun at Evermore is just finding your own quests. What I mean by that is it's hard for the park to feasibly give everybody the opportunity to sway story, but that doesn't mean that you can't create your own like personal stories with characters. Just as like an example, last season I had my journal stolen, and the only thing I knew is that a world walker had taken it, and that one of the dragon trainers, Celine, knew who it was. So I tried forever to get her to tell me who it was, but she had promised not to tell. And I tried yes or no games, I tried bribing, and eventually we decided that she would write a riddle, seal it in a letter, send it to her brother Cyrus, right? And if I could convince Cyrus to read me the letter, then I could solve the riddle and find out who it was. And it was Robin who stole it. But that was just a very creative way that like we came up with together to kind of skirt around the rules. And there's like a million different ways that you can find creative ways to quest your own quests at Evermore. You can write characters letters, right? You can give them gifts. And all of these things help you get more immersed and involved in the story as well.
And actually, is this a good time for me to share my plot playing? Do we have time?
Let me tell one more thing.
Yeah.
Sure. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Also doing nothing. I feel like
I do
Just
so
vibe,
much
right?
of
That's
that.
what you-
I love doing
doing
that.
nothing isn't such a bad thing. Like sitting around a campfire, just being around the magic and the environment, it's worth it as it is. And a lot of times, like that'll give you an opportunity to talk to people and be a better version of yourself. I know that's a goal that I have going to Evermore. It's a different fantasy world. It involves it provides me a way to be a different version of who I am in the real world, someone better. It becomes a social sandbox at that point.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the friendships we build in Evermore are really like deep and
Yeah.
authentic. Like my best friends are all people I met in Evermore. And so
And a lot of that happens while you're doing nothing,
while you're doing nothing, you're on the fire.
staring at the fire.
Yeah, that opportunity to just chat.
I just did want to bring up a comment from YouTube really quick. They said the pine cone thing was they told Cordelia she needed to organize her trinkets for traits. Cordelia said, I have one pine cone. Do I need to get a separate bag for those? And Sir Taylor said, you will. I thought that was pretty good. Anyway, yes, Robin, go on.
Sure. So this season, I tried playing a new way with bringing my own story in instead of being so much of an investigative reporter type character.
That was me.
Yeah, you kind of dropped me that. And it was actually really fun. I wrote my own story arc and then brought that into the sandbox of Evermore to just see how it would fit in town and see what the different characters would do and the world walkers would do. And it was a lot of work, but it was super, super fun. And every night I would have multiple endings for my own storyline, my plot arc. And it would be just depending on what the characters and world walkers did. That's the direction my personal story would go. And so usually I had no idea how the night was going to end. And that was really fun to just be like, okay, we're just going to see how this happens. But that gave me opportunities to work with the characters in ways that were new. And so I had some really great experiences with characters that I normally wouldn't associate with. Robin is more of a good character, but there were reasons why she was a villain this time. And so I got to network with the monsters, which was really interesting. But one thing I wanted to share about that is that you can do that by bringing in your own plots, your own puzzles and riddles. I started it out by having like this box that we were like, okay, Robin's crew found this and it's got these runes to be translated and we don't know what's inside. And so that pulled a lot of world walkers in. I did tell them it's important to know that it's not a park sanctioned storyline. So they knew going into it that this was just my own thing. I don't work for the park. But it was really, really fun because by opening up my character experience to anyone who wanted to be a part of it, I was able to make friendships with people I hadn't met before, and we had some really good friendships that grew over the course of that season. So if you wanted to do that sort of play, my biggest advice would be to coordinate with other world walkers that you know, either your friends, or kind of start putting out feelers for world walkers who might like to be part of a storyline. People were very willing to help push along plot points for me, and so we would coordinate out of park. Like, here are the main things that I need to have happen tonight that my character can't push myself. And so it was really good. We had lots and lots of good friendships, neat opportunities. If I can share two of my favorite moments in it, I had a duel with another world walker named Rafeld. He was awesome to play with, by the way. And so we had a magic duel in the battle arena, and it was so fun because we each had magic we were able to use on each other and create this scene that was just fun for other world walkers to participate in and watch, and we just loved it.
It was wild.
Yeah, it was really fun. I enjoyed it a lot. And then Tala was also another really awesome World Walker to play with. She's another great actress, and she would do lots of magic rituals throughout the season for my storyline. So you get to have these moments with other World Walkers that are just fun. They're different and enriching. I loved it. So I highly recommend it. If I can talk about the Scavenger Hunt, do we have like 2 more minutes? Or do you want me to stop? I can stop.
Yes, we will actually, because that leads in a little bit to my next point.
So one of my plot points was a big scavenger hunt that I had 2 teams racing each other through the park, trying to get all the clues and items and then find a treasure box that was going to have different potions. And the winning team would choose which potion to give me, and that would affect my storyline trajectory. And I was thinking that Robin's team would win and Draka is the villain, the team for the villain. I was thinking that they would lose, but Pitt was a social hacker here.
I really wanted to win.
So instead of like solving the riddles to be like, go to this person and then do this, and then go to this person and do this, he just started running around the park asking every character, do you have something for about a treasure hunt? Like, what do I need to do to get your treasure hunt object? And so he wasn't even doing the riddles, and his team was blazing ahead, and I'm like panicking, like, oh no, they're supposed to be way slower, way far behind. So they almost won, even though one of the performers, Rusty, kept that team for 30 minutes, delaying them with a dance-off. And that's how far ahead your team was, that they still almost won.
It was quite a dance-off.
I loved that dance-off. That's what I just want to talk about that next. Some of the things that I do at Evermore is I really like to wander, and I'm often not the best at completing the quests that the park has organized for people, which is funny for me because I feel like I need to be able to talk about those things on like social media and stuff. But I just love, like, I don't know, the kismet of seeing what comes my way, and just seeing which characters don't have lines, and, you know, learning about their life stories. Or they have a lot of vendors right now, and I really just enjoy shopping and getting to know some of the vendors and stuff. But one of my favorite experiences this season was actually with Rusty from Path of the Traveler. And I just loved his idea. There's so many creative vendors at Evermore, but he has these different cloaks he makes, and he only has a few each night. But each cloak has an individual story, whether it's like the skin of a selkie, or I'm trying to remember the different ones I heard, but I love it because you can ask him about every cloak, what its story is. And he's so funny because he said, like, every cloak is meant for a certain person. So he'd try cloaks on people, and he'd be like, no, that one's not for you. It was like the wand and the wizard thing, you know? Cool. And I have a video of it that I'll have to post later about him talking about his cloaks that literally made me tear up. I was like, he was kind of like not a character, but still my favorite character of the season. I just always wanted to see what they were up to over there. And then I was in the dance-off with them. I didn't realize we were being delayed because I was having a blast. I was like, this is so much fun. And his secret was you had to choose something that already had steps to beat him. And I didn't know this, but I naturally chose that. I was just like, okay, we're gonna do like the thriller for mine. And the next girl, she was like, what do I do? And I was like, just do like, you know, head, shoulders, knees, and toes, or like, you know, the Macarena or something. And I was like totally on the right track. It made me so excited. But anyway, so like that has nothing to do with like what you might think you would do at Evermore, but that was like some of my funnest moments this season. Yeah. So it's really interesting.
Are we talking about our favorite moments then?
No, not necessarily.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, I just want to make a point
yes.
that, like, with all of these things, you need to make sure that's within the realms of there are lines that are drawn,
yes.
right?
Oh,
so with a lot of these things, you should check with the characters and maybe even loop them in with your pranks and have them do it with you, or, you know, loop them into your quests and your acting so that you make sure that you're not crossing certain lines, or even
yes.
like doing things on nights where important things are supposed to happen and you might detract from that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Can I add on that,
Yeah.
actually? So when I was coordinating with characters, I always would say, here's my proposal. Are you comfortable with this? Is this something you're okay with? Make sure they're in control of whether or not to accept collaborating with you. And then, shoots my goots. I just forgot what it's. Oh yeah, if the night is busy, park duties take precedence always for the actors. Make sure you're not interfering with any of that. That's part of why I did so much with Leander, because he's one of the only characters who wasn't running a guild and things.
Oh,
And
right.
so he was usually available for me to go collaborate with. But even then, there were nights where we tried to get Leander and Rafael together for a hypnotizing scene. And I think we tried for like 90 minutes just to get the two of them together. And like all night long, they were only like 50 feet apart from each other. But every time we would try to get Leander over to Rafael, he would get guests coming up saying, I'm back to report on the quest I did. And every 5 feet, he was being stopped. And so that scene never happened. And so that's fine. That's fine. Just make sure you go in with the expectation that maybe things will work the way you would like, and maybe
Have
they
a plan
don't.
B. Just
Exactly.
in case.
Or a plan C or a plan D. And lines that aren't supposed to be crossed. That's the other one. Originally, I had coordinated with Leander for a vampire bite scene, and he was going to turn Robin into a vampire. And like, you guys were all doing the scavenger hunt, and this was supposed to be the scene at the end of the scavenger hunt. And you guys were like 2 minutes away from being done, and we found out, no, we can't do it. The park owner says no. And so then we were like, shoot, we need a plan B. That doesn't work. We can't pull that off in 2 minutes. Plan C, we can't do that one either. That character's busy. And so we were trying to figure out another way to do things. So yes, make sure you get approval.
I would say in general, you probably, if you are wanting to make your own story, probably don't rely on the actors even too
in
heavily.
general.
Just rely on your friends, whether you're coming in with your D&D group and, just be like, let's have this going on with our characters while we're visiting Evermore as an extra layer to our play. Or just with your family. There's a World Walker Discord where you can, meet people who go to Evermore regularly and, possibly play with them. Because, sometimes you'll be lucky and things with actors will happen, but let them be the leaders of that for sure. I would say in general, just try to coordinate with World Walkers. And then if, an actor reaches out in character and says, oh, I heard that, you have a curse where you can only speak in rhyme right now. Can I help you with that? Then you can say, oh yes, let's involve them.
Thank you for clarifying that. I really agree with that as well. So yes, primarily work with other World Walkers
because they've got a job to do. They got a script to get through.
And their job is the park, not your story.
Yes, yes, for sure. But you can. But you totally can kind of create your own story to do with your friends as well. Okay, let's all share a favorite moment if you haven't shared already. I guess I did with Rusty and stuff.
I got one. So my favorite character this season ended up being Nox. I was firmly on Team Cinder for a while, but I did switch to Nox. And Nox is a magician. He's a warlock, but he also likes to dabble in World Walker magic, so card tricks and whatnot. And I learned a card trick towards the end of the season when all of this was going down. And in a moment of bravado one night, he was doing card tricks. So I was like, let me do one. And it's a very simple one. I started it, and then I realized how intently he was staring me down while I was doing this trick, to the point of actually counting my cards under his breath. And I was like, this was a mistake. Apparently I was beet red, and you could tell by firelight, because by this point it was completely dark. It was like almost midnight, if not past midnight when I was doing this. Park was getting ready to close. It was totally dark. I'm doing it by firelight in the Black Heart's hovel, just like blushing beet red the whole time, trying to count my cards with shaky hands. I did pull off the trick, which I'm so glad about, because that would have been so embarrassing. But at one point I heard him counting my cards, and I looked up and I said, stop it. It was like doing a test in front of my teacher.
That's rough.
Very fun, though.
Do you want to go next, Fit?
Yeah, I mean, I shared a few already, but I guess one that's not quite so spectacular, but it's just the little things that make the experience that much more special. I was talking with, I believe it was maybe Delphi and Rose Red. We were talking about Rose Red when she's a bear and what it's like. And I was asking, well, how big are you? And she's like, I don't know, this big? I'm like, well, exactly how big are you? And she's like, well, I can't, get a measuring tape out. I'm like, but you guys, fight together. Maybe you can measure each other. So the next time I came to park, Rose Red handed me a piece of paper with her measurements down. So she's 1,600 pounds. She's 4.27 meters tall and 3.8 meters at the shoulder.
And then you ordered a bear suit for her, yes? No.
That was the next step. That was the next step. Yeah.
That's awesome. One of my favorites was tied in with my plot, because that was mostly what I was doing in park this season, was this random storyline, and just however people intersected with it, I would go with it. And Mag had an amulet that would control the villain that was inside of Robin. And you were part of getting that on me.
Yeah, I was.
Oh,
I
man.
distracted her.
They had to put it over my neck, and then Mag had a coin that would let her control Draka and compel her to do things. That was really, really fun to play around with, because I went to go attack Mag, and I'm just like inches from her face, and she goes, "Stop!" It was so fun. It was so fun.
Yeah, the way we got it on her is that I think you, Draka had asked me something.
About vampires.
Yeah, and I came up and I was like, hey, I found out about that thing you were asking about. Just started saying things. When I'm trying to distract someone, I just start talking, and I don't really think about what I'm saying.
And I was so into the conversation, because I was like, ooh, I want to know this.
I believe it was...
It was Mabel.
Mabel, yeah. She
Yeah.
snuck up behind you and just kind of looped it over your head.
So the funny thing about that was you guys were supposed to do like 3 more tasks before getting to that point in the night. There was like this sequence of events to like unfold, and you guys like skipped to step 4.
And Mabel, like, I think had something, and I said, well, why don't we just distract her and loop it over her head? What's stopping us? And she's like, nothing, I guess.
Yeah, I was very surprised. But my favorite moment with that coin was later in the season. There were a bunch of world walkers who were doing a magic ritual to get Draka out of Robin, and they were all so excited about it. And Leander had the coin and came up and interrupted the ritual and pulled out the coin and started hypnotizing Robin. That was super fun, just because of the reactions of the other world walkers and their faces. Oh my gosh, that was my favorite.
Okay, so we do want to do a giveaway today, and we are giving away a ticket to the Aurora season. So we've got a trivia question, and the first response that I see come in the chat for it is going to be the winner. I've got a delay, so I'm going to ask the question, and then we're going to talk a little bit about our theories for next season while we let you answer. So the question is, what is the title that is given, or what do you call the oldest vampire living? So what is the title for that? Well, we'll see if somebody answers. Okay, their winter season is called Aurora, and they did tease a few things on their Instagram, just like pictures of what we might be able to expect. We saw obviously some winter sort of shots, but then some sort of fiery looking shots too. So a lot of people are wondering if it's going to be sort of fire and ice theme. We saw a picture of a wolf, so there might be some more wolves of winter. But what do you guys think? What are you hoping to see?
I think they specifically said that there would
Yeah,
be wolves in
they
winter.
said
Yeah.
that, and dwarves named the Kringles was another one that I heard. And
Okay.
Yeah, Chris Kringle was going to be there.
I don't really know what to predict. I know that they said there's not going to be any returning characters this season, so my predictions are kind of all up in the air because I don't know who's going to be there and what the characters are going to be like. So I'm just planning to go in day 1 and start learning everybody's names.
Yeah. Yes.
I did notice that. So they've been sending around a lot of surveys around the World Walkers lately about questing and stories and things like that.
And
so
guild ranks too.
Oh, really? That makes me really hopeful for just things progressing, because I know a lot of people were bummed when things were so-called scaled down for Mythos, and I feel like things kind of started gaining speed again in lore, and I feel like it's just going to continue to get better in Aurora. So I'm very hopeful.
I'm really excited. They have a writing team back on staff again, so I'm really hopeful that we'll have really complex plots again that we were kind of missing the last couple seasons. And so I'm really, really excited to dig deep into those character stories. And I'm anticipating more plot twists this season. And I'm really hoping the Wolves of Winter will have the ways to join the Wolves of Winter pack like they did in years past. That's
If
really
I
cool.
may be a little bit defensive, I feel like the Nox and Cinder and Annie stuff was pretty complex.
Oh yes, there definitely were some complex storylines, but like in past seasons, it seems like every character had a really complex storyline, and in this season, it seems like you had a handful that had really complex storylines. And kudos to those actors or writers, whoever came up with it, brilliantly done. I loved it. But I feel like a lot of the characters were lacking that dimension. So.
And I think that also depends sometimes on how much attention the characters get. Like, I feel like sometimes you can unlock stories that you don't realize are there, or you can kind of create that through, talking to someone about, like, oh, this is something that I'm going through, and then you just make it a thing, and you say, everyone, let's help this character, And so I think there's definitely an element of that.
There's not,
yeah.
like, I feel like, you and Rin were digging relentlessly.
Yes.
I feel like not too many other people were, and in seasons past you had a lot more of that, so maybe there are like a lot more plot things that could have been found. Like, what was Peter's story? Like, he killed his wife, and is that it?
It sounded like his wife was still alive. I talked to him about
really?
it a number of times.
I think it might have been the madness that
Yeah.
made him think that was true, because that's how the poem goes.
But just
I
as
don't
an
know.
example, like, I know there's characters that we didn't dig into as much as we probably could have.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so for the ticket, the first answer that we had for that, and the answer was Arch Grimoire is what you call the oldest vampire. And the first one to say that, I'm just gonna make sure that I'm reading it correctly so that I don't say it wrong. Okay, is Blue Yoshi Girl. So I will message you afterwards and we'll talk about that. Okay, so what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, my main wonder okay, so we've seen, do we know if this is an alternate reality to like Evermore past entirely?
We don't really.
Because I feel like that's what we were led to believe in Mythos.
So Wickham-
and then it just seems like it's 20 years earlier and it could be the same world. I'm
Wickham
not
had
sure.
a theory that it was sort of an alternate timeline.
Okay.
I'm sorry, everyone, but I don't understand the magic system in Evermore. I never really have, and so
think
at
it
this point,
changes.
I've kind of given up. So Wickham tried to talk to me about chronomancy this season, and I just whoosh. So, but he did say something about an alternate timeline.
Yes.
Okay, so it is alternate.
Because there are some definite differences.
Yes.
Like, we met Killian and Aoden, part of the Blackhearts last time, and in this timeline they're dead.
And I don't believe
That's
that Dresden was a character in the original, like,
Oh, really?
28.
Okay.
Was he? I don't think so.
I don't
So it's
remember.
interesting because it's both an alternate reality, but something like 20 years earlier?
It is
Yes.
1866.
Right, and it
is
was
what
like
Clive told me.
1880s before. So that's what I'm just interested to see more
Yeah.
of, is because we might see Wolves of Winter and stuff, but hopefully I would think we're not going to see the Wolves of Winters as refugees from Aurora. I don't know, because maybe they still will be. But maybe we'll see everyone before the cultures were decimated, because, there was only one from the Raven culture left and one from the Bear culture
right.
left. So maybe we'll actually see them with more vibrant communities, probably not off screen, but like maybe everyone's alive. And I'm just so curious. I'm like, who's ruling Aurora right now? Who's in charge? What are those Frost Lords up to? Because they're my favorite thing ever. Like, the Frost Lords are my favorite thing ever. So I'm really interested to see what we're gonna see for that season.
I have to say, it was really cool to see young Wickham.
I loved Wickham.
Yeah, it was nice to see young Wickham.
Yes.
It kind of just gave a fist bump back to the old seasons, and even though he doesn't know us, we know him.
And he was also great to talk to if you had questions about some of the deeper lore kind of stuff, because he knew everything. Those of you who looked at my Discord safe notes saw that I had notes on like the Dark Blood Plague and stuff in there. That's stuff I learned from Wickham, just kind of chatting with him. He tried to talk to me about chronomancy, but again, and yeah, it's like he was great fun to talk to. He was shy but very, very friendly, which is in good contrast to that actor's other character, which was grim.
Every other character.
Yes. And it was neat because it being Wickham and all of the science and chronomancy that he engages in, I felt like if you said, oh yes, we know each other, he would believe you and be like, that's great, like you knew a version of me, like, and he wouldn't think you were crazy.
I could hear him saying, oh okay.
Anyway, thank you so much for joining us today.
Do you have
if you
any
want
final questions?
Yeah, we don't have any questions up
Okay.
right now, and we are past time.
What
But
about the grand champions?
Oh yes, I wanted to talk about the Grand Champions. Speaking of other things you can do in Evermore, so you've got your archery and your battle arena and axe throwing. And if you are the person who wins in those categories, all three categories in one night, you become a Grand Champion of Evermore. So that's something that a lot of people have worked towards, but two finally made it this.
A little correction, I don't think you necessarily have to do them in one night, but one of our Grand Champions did.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I've been told, is that it has to be in one night.
It's the same weekend.
It was
same weekend?
Taylor did it in one night.
It was originally one night, and they changed it to one weekend after months and months of it being a thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we had Sir Taylor was one of our Grand Champions.
And he was the one that did it in one night.
Oh,
no,
he was
other way around.
Other way around. Because I know
That's what Shadowford claimed anyway.
Captain Shadowforge was the first one to be able to do it.
Yeah, so he was the first Grand Champion, but I believe that Sir Taylor was the first one to do it in one night. But I mean, I'm sure he'll correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes. I just want to bring up his picture because I want to acknowledge it because that's.
But it was like
that is
months,
Cedric.
This
Cedric,
is like
no.
the result of months of them trying to get it.
Yes.
Like
it took.
every night they came to park,
There's Captain
you'd see
Shadowford.
them in the archery range, you would see them in the battle arena because they were trying every single weekend to get this.
Yes.
And they have their little names on a plaque by the Knights table now.
And just a huge thanks to Crow. That recap video would not exist without her excellent note-taking skills.
I'm the thing knower now.
And thanks to everyone on Discord who interacts with us. If you want to chat more about Evermore, that's a great place to do it. You can send me a message on Ever Adventurous to get that link, or on the Facebook page for the Everfolk. But yeah, thanks for joining us today and geeking out together. We enjoy it so much. And I will post that recap video separately so that you can have really easy access to that later on as well. But yes, thank you, and we will talk to you more and see you next season.
All right.
No. I don't know where we're going. I feel like at the end of shows, they